I'd like to call to order the January 9th, 2024 MSD of Steuben County Board of Trustees of Finance meeting. Would you please stand and say Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. At this time, do we have any patron comments?
Mr. President, we do not have any. We do have two patron comments for the regular board meeting, but none for the Board of Finance.
Would you please continue?
Board, we do have a Board of Finance meeting, so we have a couple of housekeeping items that we need to attend of first and foremost. First of all, Indiana Code 5-13-7-6 states that we do have to have a Board of Finance to begin the brand new school year. Dr. Penrod will take a majority of these items. First things first, though, we do need to ask all board members will need to appoint a president and a secretary for the Board of Finance. I would recommend that you keep those officers in place. Those officers would be Mr. Corey Archbold and Mrs. Leanne Boots as the two officers for the Board of Finance. Corey being president and Leanne being secretary.
Any comment or discussion? Open to a motion.
So moved.
Yes.
Yes.
Mrs. Maggart.
Aye.
And Mr. Ridenhour.
Yes.
Thank you. So this is just kind of a wrap up of what we need to do for what we got for revenue for the last calendar year. You might go back. All right. Thank you. So we have the annual investment here listed in your packet, the end of year revenue report at 45 million, end of year expenditure report at 47,673, the end of year transfers at 8,624, and then we're recommending approving mileage at the IRS rate for 2024, which is now 0.67 cents, up from 0.655 cents in 2023. So pretty similar to last year as far as the concept, and the mileage obviously is a little different, and each of those numbers is a little different, but concept is still the same. Any questions on that?
Dr. Penrod, can we wait to vote on the mileage rate when we get down to the bottom of the list for the board? Okay.
The expenditures are quite a bit higher than the revenue. That would have to do with, a lot of it has to do with reimbursements as well. So that's every fund. That's not just the education fund or just the operations fund. That's why you see that. So some of that we do get reimbursed, and so it's usually that's 15 days to 30 days behind schedule. So okay, so our next one then is the fund transfer detail. And so this just details what we have, what we already explained in the as a whole. That's where those come from. We had a payback loan on the operations fund made to or from the debt service fund. Our debt service fund is complete now. We don't have any more. I'm sorry, pension debt service fund is complete now. Don't have that anymore, but we did have a little activity back in 2023, the second period. So that's where that 862428 comes from. Okay. Our next item. Okay. Our next item is the what's called a DUAB report, the Distress Unit Appeals Board, or the Financial Conditions Report. I'll apologize to begin with. The date is correct, but I forgot to change the date, so my template here is. Oh, it is? Sorry about that. So expired warrants, we, every year we have to ask the board for permission to cancel the expired warrants. Expired warrants are checks that are no good after December 31st of 2 years after issuance. So anything issued, like if we issued a check today, that would be expired on December 31 of 2026. And so, so December 31 plus 2 years. These are the checks that are still outstanding after going to December 31 of the date of issue, and then 2 more years. So we've got $159.90 is the most we have, but we do have 6 of them there that we'll ask for your approval to liquidate, do away with.
They just go back into where they came out?
Yeah, because since it wasn't cashed, obviously the cash never came out, so that.
Well, I remember somebody said one time that Indiana states, Indiana, so they have a chance to go back and collect it later.
I'm not aware of that. I thought you could,
That's
once they
been
were
a few
expired.
years ago, so it may
Yeah,
change.
yeah, could be.
Okay.
Any questions on expired warrants? Again, pretty typical. I think last year we had about the same, might have been 8, but pretty typical. Typically when people get paid for services, they're going to cash their checks. So we'll move on to.
Brandon, do you want them to vote on being able to do those warrants?
You can do that now, that'd be great. If not, you can do it later on. But yeah, if we can do it now, that'd be great.
Would you rather do it single by single, or do you want to do it all, you want to just wait to it?
That's fine. Okay. So financial conditions report. So again, the date is correct in this, but I did forget to change the date. I was using the same template as last year, so last year we were January 10th, 2023. So this is, again, the DUAB report or financial conditions report. DUAB stands for Distress Unit Appeals Board. And I should preface this too by saying you've basically seen all of this, I think all of this actually, in different formats. It's just compiled through public records by the Distress Unit Appeals Board and then shown on their website. And then we have to present that information once a year. So all of this, like I said, again, we've seen all of this at some point in time. Our most recent audit was June 23rd of 23. Additional audits are found at the State Board of Accounts website. This is our ADM from 22-23, most recent available. This is our net AV for 23, again, most recent available. And then our 21 estimated population at 18,564. And that's just for this district, this school district, not the county. As we move into these next few slides, this kind of breaks down each of those different pieces of data. So we have the certified net assessed value, or the NAV, you see NAV, history here of 2013 to 2023. You can see that there were some years where it either didn't grow, like here it dropped, or didn't grow a whole lot. And then toward these last few years, 4 years, we've had quite a bit of growth from $1,373,000, $1,445,000, $549,000, and then $1,763. This year it went up again, as you know. I think we're in the $1.8 billion range now. And for a school this size, as far as ADM goes, it's a really high AV. And so that's why, as you know, we're able to do a lot of the stuff we do through debt and bonding without increasing tax rate. And I'll talk about tax rate in just a second as well. So demographics then are next. And so we've got it broken down by 3 different categories: English language learners, free and reduced lunch, and special ed. And so these percentages are, again, a 10-year history here of what these percentages are for each of those demographics for the school. You can see they're pretty much in line. You see a little bit of a jump here, but kind of a dip in 21. So that could be COVID related. But anyway, this is kind of how the breakdown of the student population looks. Next, our population estimates. Typically don't spend a lot of time on this one because it doesn't directly deal with the school system. Obviously, the district is going to hopefully get more students enrolled if the population's higher, but there are some scenarios where that might not be the case. And so the other thing about this, this data is 2 years old. And so about 18,564, so over 9 years, 8-9 years, grew about 500 people. We'll get a little more information on that as we get into our demographic study, which should be at the February board meeting as far as the results of that. And that'll be more school-specific, that'll be more, I think, more useful to us than what that probably is.
Is that a district number or county number?
I believe that's a district number. I think that goes by district. So our next one then is ADM, and again, you've seen this many, many times, but the 22-23 school year, we've got fall in-person in blue and spring in-person in green. We'll see that again. We did drop a little bit, as you know, for the 2023-24 school year, but that obviously is not out yet. Next one is fund balance. Fund balance is as of December 31 of each year. So again, I know I've said this before, but you've seen all of this information. This is compiled a little bit differently, but you've seen all of this. This would be on our Form 9, it'd be on our end-of-year stuff. You'll see it tonight in your board packet tonight as December 31 is getting wrapped up. You might not see it tonight, maybe in the next couple of days, but anyway, that's our fund balance. You do see a couple negatives, and that can be, again, because of the reimbursement. Capital funds are broken down, so just to make sure you understand, capital funds is not only the operations fund, it's the, back here would have been like bus replacement, transportation, and capital projects, but there are also funds included in there that we don't have. So there's a couple that bigger schools have, like an older fund, like I can't even think of one right now, but we don't have those, but that's all considered capital funding. And so what we'll see here is from here back, capital projects, bus replacement, and transportation. And from 19 forward, we'll see just the operations fund. All right, so our annual annual deficit / surplus. So this is exactly what you think, right? You've got green revenue and blue expenditures, and then you've got orange for revenue exceptions and red for expenditure exceptions. So what might those be? A good example of that would be a transfer. If you would transfer something from education operations or education to rainy day or operations to rainy day, a lot of times they consider that, or they do consider that an exception because you're not really spending it, right? It's the school's money, you're just moving it from here to here. So it's not an expenditure, but it does show up when you look at, like if we went from operations to rainy day, it does show up as an expenditure on your report probably because the balance of your operations fund goes down while your rainy day goes up. And so you can see some expenditure exceptions, revenue exceptions back here. We really don't see any up here. And so in 22, our revenue green was higher than our expenditures. And this is all funds. So again, not just the education fund or just the operations fund, that's all funds. And the gray then is the fund balance. And again, all fund balances. If we were pulling this down, this isn't interactive, but if we were pulling this down, we could do that by education fund, operations fund, et cetera. The gray line here is the fund balance, and so as you would guess, if the blue is less than the green, the fund balance is going up, and so you can see that kind of trend. Again, all available, all Form 9 type of data. Fund balance is a percentage of operations expenditures. Again, all funds, so we're classifying all funds here, and this a good example of this might be if you have an operations fund budget of $10 million and a cash balance of $3 million, you would have a 30% cash to expenditures, right? So, so this tells us we're kind of rising here, kind of settled down in the last 3-4 years here in that 30-ish% range. Again, if we were at if we were per fund, that might look a little bit different, but as a whole, all of our funds together were 30% of operations to cash to expenditures. And you can leave it on that slide, but the purpose of that one is if some sort of emergency comes up, like back in the day, the state would not like skip a payment and then make 2 payments later. This would show our ability to weather that storm. Like if somebody would skip a payment, and this hasn't happened in quite a while either, but if tax draws were late, this would show our ability to make up the difference if that tax draw was late. Again, that hasn't happened for a long time, but that's kind of what the point of that slide is. Okay, sorry about that. All right, revenue by type. So as you can imagine, as you've seen before, we have a lot of different revenue coming in. We have federal funds, state funds, grant funds, any kind of local type of fund, and so, or revenue. So the majority of what we receive is state, and that's that big thick blue line there. And that's what you're gonna see every month on the state tuition support. What we see is Form 54, and then we put that in your report as state tuition support or basic tuition support or something like that. You'll see that coded as a 3111 if you're looking at like a revenue report. And so the state revenue is the largest slice of that. We get into like federal revenue, so you're talking title grants, all the stimulus money, all the ESSERs and CARES and all that kind of stuff. Other local revenue could be donations, could be a local tax. This local tax revenue might be like a local option income tax, and then we can decide where we put that. But anyway, that's all of our funds. So if we pull this up as education instead of all, this 3111, this light blue would look a little more, would look a little thicker because that generally funds all of the education. And then finally, this is kind of funny to me. We have to include this slide because it's on the DUAB site, but it is the operating revenue versus percentage of total revenue. We do not have an operating referendum, and so we do not have a percentage there. So that kind of wraps up fiscal conditions or DUAB or distress unit appeals presentation, but I'd be glad to answer any questions.
Anybody have any questions?
No action on that, just an FYI, just a report. All right, and then our, excuse me, our ECA report, so we see these in June, the fiscal year, and then we see them with the calendar year as well. And so this just goes over like the each individual ECA or extracurricular activity has a fund or an account at the in the ECA fund. And so like you see some of these bigger ones, athletics has a lot of activity. Some of the smaller ones like the art club or the auditorium doesn't have a whole lot of activity, if any. And so this is just this will be similar to a fund report at the corporation level. It's just at the extracurricular level instead. So not dealing with nearly the size of dollars, but you can see Mrs. Newman does this, and there's a ton of work to do here with each one of these funds individually. Any questions on that one? No? And is there one more item? Depository. The depository, we have to make a recommendation every year on a depository. We would recommend that we continue our same relationship that we have now. We have no issues, no complaints, and so we would recommend that we continue that. Also look at we have to review the investment policy. That goes along with the depository. Our investment policy has not changed as part of the policies that we passed and update every now and then on a pretty regular basis, but that particular one doesn't change. And so at this point, when you are voting, I would recommend that you approve the same banking relationship and the same policy as we have currently in place.
And I assume the mileage of 67 cents. So board, you can take that all in one collective action if that's what you want to do, or you can stream them out and take them one at a time on how you'd like to vote on it.
I make a motion that we take them collectively and that we go ahead and approve as recommended.
Amber, please call the roll.
Mr. Beard.
Yes.
Mrs. Boots.
Yes.
Mr. Caswell. Mrs. Maggart.
Yes.
Mr. Poor.
Aye.
And Mr. Reidenauer.
Yes.
That would conclude the finance meeting. I have a motion to adjourn.
I move to adjourn.
A second?
Mrs. Cole, please call the roll.
Mr. Beard?
Yes.
Mrs. Boots? Mr. Caswell?
Yes.
Mrs. Maggart?
Yes.
Mr. Poor?
Hey.
Mr. Ridenhour?
Yes.
Thank you. The regular board meeting will start at 7 o'clock. 2024 MSD of Steuben County Board of Trustees reorganizational meeting to order. Dr. Wiedenhofer, would you please begin the meeting?
Board, part of Indiana Code 20-26-4-1 requires any school board to have a reorganization meeting prior to January 15th. This night will serve for that function. So before we get into our regular meeting, we do have a few housekeeping items. So I'll go through the line, which will require some action on your parts, and then we can get to our regular meeting. First off, Indiana Code 20-26-4-1 requires the election of board officers. The board will need to elect a president, a vice president, and secretary of the Board of School Trustees. You have a couple of options. You may choose to keep the same officers in place, or you may discuss at this point in time a different set of officers.
Any discussion? Open to a motion?
I move that we go with status quo on our officers.
I'll second.
Amber, please call the roll.
Mr. Caswell.
Yes.
Mrs. Maggart.
Yes.
Mr. Poor.
Aye.
Mr. Ridenhour.
Yes.
The next thing that is on your schedule is a adoption of a meeting schedule. The board needs to adopt a meeting schedule. I'm recommending the third Tuesday of each month for all months in 2024, with the exception of October and December, because we do have fall and winter breaks in there. In January, we'd like to meet on the second Tuesday of the month due to state guidelines. So in your packet, you do have a proposed 2024 school board meeting dates. Everything kind of falls on that third Tuesday, with the exception of October, December, and January due to the fall breaks and board reorganization. I would also like to recommend that all board meetings start at 6 o'clock versus our 6:30 start.
Any discussion or any issue with the 6 o'clock start?
I make a motion that we go ahead and accept the recommendations.
Amber, please call the roll.
Mr. Beard.
Yes.
Mrs. Boots.
Yes.
Mr. Caswell.
Yes.
Mrs. Maggart.
Yes.
Mr. Poor.
Aye.
And Mr. Ridenhour.
Yes.
The third item, board, is you do have board member salaries per Indiana Code 20-26-4-7. The board needs to establish board salaries for the upcoming school year. I'm recommending that the board continue to use the current amounts that are set forth by the state statute. That rate would be $2,000 per year, plus a per diem of $112 for regular meetings and $62 for all other meetings remain the same.
Open for a motion?
I move that we go ahead and accept as is.
Please call the roll.
Mr. Beard.
Yes.
Mrs. Boots.
Yes.
Mr. Caswell.
Yes.
Mrs. Maggart.
Yes.
Mr. Poor.
Aye.
And Mr. Ridenhour.
Yes.
Board number 4, as part of the process, we do need to appoint the bonding of a treasurer and assistant treasurer. The board will need to appoint one of those folks. I'm recommending you that we appoint Sherry Newman as treasurer and Penny Pinelli as assistant treasurer, and that both of those individuals be bonded.
For a motion, please?
I move to appoint Sherry and Penny as treasurer and assistant treasurer and bond as such.
I'll second that.
Please call the roll.
Mr. Beard.
Yes.
Mrs. Boots.
Yes.
Mr. Caswell.
Yes.
Mrs. Maggart.
Yes.
Mr. Poor.
Aye.
And Mr. Ridenhour.
Yes.
Board, this evening, we also need to appoint a school board attorney. The board needs to appoint legal representation for the upcoming school year. I am recommending to you that we appoint the law firm of Warwick and Boyne, along with the law firm of Barnes and Thornburg.
Open for a motion?
I move that we accept attorneys as presented.
Mr. Beard?
Yes.
Mrs. Boots?
Yes.
Mr. Caswell?
Yes.
Mrs. Maggart?
Yes.
Mr. Poor?
Aye.
And Mr. Ridenhour?
Yes.
And lastly, board, we do need to appoint a qualified publisher. We need to select a publisher for our legal notices that get put out throughout the school year. I am recommending that you continue to use the Herald Republican for this service.
Open for a motion, even though their coverage isn't as good as it used to be.
I move to use the Herald Republican for our publisher.
I'll second.
Mr. Beard?
Yes.
Mrs. Boots?
Yes.
Mr. Caswell?
Yes.
Mrs. Maggart?
Yes.
Mr. Poor?
Aye.
And Mr. Ridenhour?
Yes.
Board, that concludes our reorganization. Nobody has to move any seats. Everybody stays in place. We are without Mr. Archbold tonight. He did signal his intent that he'd like to stay president, so should you choose to keep him in those spots. So just to clarify, Corey Archbold will be our board president, Kevin Beard will serve as vice president, and Mrs. Leanne Boots will serve as our secretary. Okay.
At this time, we'll proceed with our regular meeting, and at this time, we are open to patron comments. Patrons will need to be reminded of the following. Persons who wish to speak will need to do so from the podium. They must state their first and last name. They can only speak on agenda items only. The board will not engage in questions or comments, and you're limited to 3 minutes. We do have some people interested. Marilyn Dorr, would you please approach the podium?
My name is Marilyn Dorr. I'm a retired kindergarten teacher from MSD. I taught for 28 years at MSD. And here is my concern. They're Dr. Wiedenhofer and MSD Steuben County board members. Retired teacher, I've been substituting since retirement in 2016 because I still enjoy teaching. I know there's a need for qualified substitutes, and I'm one that takes this job seriously when I'm in the classroom. Since teachers received a nice raise recently, which they deserved, I was hoping substitutes would also receive one instead of being paid less than we would have made as of December 11th, 2023, when the hourly rate was instituted. The last raise of $10 a day was given in 2019. As a substitute, I am being told to receive the same pay that I received before December 11th. I need to stay after the students are dismissed by 40 minutes for Hendry, Carlin, and Ryan Park Elementaries, and stay after for 55 minutes at Pleasant Lake Elementary to receive the same substitute pay that I did before December 11th, going on hourly. I will need to remain at Pleasant Lake after the students are dismissed. I'm not sure what's expected of me as a substitute, as when the students are gone, there's nothing which has to deal with students to be done. Notes to the absent teacher usually only take a few minutes, which I do, and I've been diligent in writing these notes all day long. They don't take long to do. This seems to be a waste of time to stay without students for so much more than likely substitutes would like to, without students. So more than likely, substitutes will leave when the students leave, thus deducting the amount of pay of the hourly rate, leaving the amount earned less than the 8-hour day pay. I'm stumbling. Is that the objection of the hourly rate, to pay substitutes less because they do have nothing to do but sit and check their phones or read a book? My time and other substitutes' time is valuable, and dealing with a class or classes as a substitute is stressful as the students try to get away with whatever they can while their teacher is not at school. As stated in the paperwork sent about the changes on December 11th, it is natural for a class to test a substitute, which I'm sure we all did. I hope this letter will bring some discussion as to why substitutes who are an essential part of the school system are being treated this way. I would welcome any answers to my questions. Would you like to be paid less than you were prior to December 11th, but still be doing the same job? I have a note, I have attached a letter, and I have the times that were given to us in the letter for December 11th, telling us the times of the start day, the times that students end, and the times that substitute teachers have to stay. Thank you very much. Maybe, I wrote this up, teachers, aides, cafeteria workers, bus drivers have all received raises. Maybe it's time for substitutes to receive raises too. If you can bring that substitute pay up to where we were leaving at the same time, that would help all of the substitutes not feel devalued. Thank you.
Next up is Mr. Brant Moore.
Said, a big thank you to Dr. Wiedenhofer for listening and being open to changes, something we definitely didn't have in the previous administration. As we close out the contract this year, if you remember, I said we need to continue to be as employee-friendly as we can if we're to retain our teachers. I will say again, I really appreciate Dr. Wiedenhofer's willingness to listen and to ask for feedback before he makes a decision like this, and to work in a collaborative manner, not just in a top-down model. The ACTA is supportive of the proposed calendar. Thank you.
Next up, we will have the approval of the minutes from the last meeting.
To approve the minutes as presented.
I'll second.
Amber, please call the roll.
Mr. Beard?
Yes.
Mrs. Boots?
Yes.
Mr. Caswell?
Yes.
Mrs. Maggart?
Yes.
Mr. Poor?
Aye.
And Mr. Ridenhour?
Yes.
Next up, we have approval of the claims that was located in your packets. Any corrections or changes to that?
116 pages of work. I kind of didn't get real deep in every one. Maybe something like Ms. Maggard was done with that, but
It's like that all the time. It used to be printed out. Killed a lot of trees printing it in the past. Any other discussion or motion to approve?
I move that we go ahead and approve the claims as submitted.
I'll second.
Mr. Beard?
Yes.
Mrs. Boots?
Yes.
Mr. Caswell?
Yes.
Mrs. Maggart?
Yes.
Mr. Poor?
Aye.
And Mr. Ridenhour?
Yes.
Next up is personnel considerations. Dr. Wiedenhofer.
Board, we are, one of the considerations for your personnel requisition, or considerations is we do have Russ Tingley. We are recommending him for tonight for be a teacher for our career and tech class. He will be replacing Rick Towers, who left us for another position. So we've had a chance to have those hard conversations and kind of look at it. We think he'll do an outstanding job, so we bring him tonight for your approval.
Is Russ separately, or is he included with all the personnel considerations?
We'll do Russ separately, and then we'll do the rest of the personnel considerations.
Open for a motion for approval?
I move that we go ahead and accept Russ Tingley as a CTE teacher.
I'll second.
Mr. Beard?
Yes.
Mrs. Boots?
Yes.
Mr. Caswell?
Yes.
Mrs. Maggart?
Yes.
Mr.
Aye.
Mr. Ridenhour?
Yes.
Next up, we'll have the rest of the personnel considerations.
Board, in your packet, you do have personnel considerations. It is a little bit shorter than what we're probably used to seeing due to Christmas break and Thanksgiving and kind of where that fell. We do have some resignations. We do have some personnel considerations, those sorts of things. So I ask that you approve those personnel considerations as presented tonight.
Any further discussion or open for a motion?
I'll make a motion that we approve the personnel considerations as presented.
Mr. Beard?
Yes.
Mr. Caswell?
Yes.
Mrs. Maggart?
Yes.
Mr. Poor? And Mr. Ridenhour?
Yes.
Okay, no special reports, so we'll go on to old business.
Board, in your packet, you do have conflict of interest disclosure statements. This is an annual requirement in which any potential conflicts of interest should be disclosed and reflected in those board minutes. Your approval simply acknowledges that the disclosure statements have been submitted and that we will keep them on file here at central office. So those are things that we keep on file for the State Board of Accounts and for our audits. So we will have you vote that you will fill those out and get those to us and keep those turned in to us. In the packet. So we'll need to vote on it.
Any further discussion or open for a motion for approval?
I move that we complete the conflict of interest disclosures and submit if necessary.
Mr. Beard?
Yes.
Mrs. Boots?
Yes.
Mr. Caswell?
Yes.
Mrs. Maggart?
Yes.
Mr. Poor?
Aye.
Mr. Ridenhour?
Yes.
Next up is the second reading of the 2026-2027 school calendar. Dr. Ray Lou.
You have, thank you, the calendar that was presented last month and that Mr. Moore spoke about. If there's any questions or further discussion, we can entertain that. Otherwise, I'm asking for your recommendation of the calendar for 2026-27.
Any further discussion?
I make a motion to approve the calendar.
I'll second that.
Mr. Beard?
Yes.
Mrs. Boots?
Yes.
Mr. Caswell?
Yes.
Mrs. Maggart?
Yes.
Mr. Poor?
Aye.
And Mr. Ridenhour?
Yes.
Next, we have 1003 resolution waiver. Dr. Ray Lou.
Board, in your packet, you have a resolution that I would like for you to approve this evening. This resolution is for us to waive Indiana Code 2030-2-3 and Indiana Code 20-20-2-2. The waiver will allow us to apply for our 3 professional development days where we do not have students, and those are just teacher days. And it also allows us to continue with the 1-hour weekly school delay for our PLCs to continue to meet. So I'm asking for your approval for the waiver, and then I'll need to have everyone sign that so I can submit this document along with our waiver request.
Does the 1-hour delay become a norm now and no major issues with scheduling?
So far, we've been very lucky. We've not had any delays on any of those days. We've been able to meet every Wednesday. Obviously, anything new, we're growing into it, but as we have kind of done some checking in over the course of the semester, I think many people are finding the time very valuable, being able to work together, plan together, and we still have our elementary schools open, as well as the middle school for parents to be able to drop off on time. We've really not had community concerns raised about that time.
Open for a motion for approval?
I move to approve the resolution to waive.
I'll second.
Mr. Beard?
Yes.
Mrs. Boots?
Yes.
Mr. Caswell?
Yes.
Mrs. Maggart?
Yes.
Mr.
Aye.
And Mr. Ridenhour?
Yes.
All right, next up is new business, AMS new course request. Dr. Elu.
Board, in your packet, you have a course request for a new course at the middle school. The course is Introduction to Design Processes. The state released last month a new listing of CTE courses that would receive funding, and they added several courses at the middle school level that are eligible for that CTE funding. So we would like to transition the current technology education class to the new title of Introduction to Design Processes. This course is very similar to the one that Mr. Savage has been teaching at the middle school level, but it does have an additional description and new title. So we'd like to be able to offer that one semester course next year at the middle school.
Open for a motion for approval?
Okay, one semester, you mean 18 weeks, right? Not 19. Make sure the middle school semester is the same.
I have a quick question. When we add these classes, like, I can understand this class because it's another technology class taught by a technology licensed teacher. When we add these classes, does the state still require that they be licensed in that area at some point in time?
Yes, they absolutely do.
I make a motion that we go ahead and accept the new class.
I'll second.
Mr. Beard?
Yes.
Mrs. Boots?
Yes.
Mr. Caswell?
Yes.
Mrs. Maggart?
Yes.
Mr. Poor?
Aye.
And Mr. Ridenhour?
Yes.
Next up is the Don Wood Foundation grant opportunity. Dr. Elu.
The Amatrol equipment, skills boss trainers that will allow our students to do hands-on practice in preparation for their SACA certifications. So this is part of the new CTE pathway that we began this year. Our plan was for Trine University to be bringing the equipment to our students and for them to be able to have the assistance of the instructor from Trine helping with that course. That instructor resigned prior to the start of this school year. They've tried to hire 3 different people and all of them have fallen through. So it would definitely be to our advantage to have our own set of equipment so that that's readily available for our students so that they've got more hands-on time being able to learn in that way. So we are requesting just the cost of that equipment, which is listed in the grant application for you here. It's about $77,000.
Do we have a teacher here that is able
We do. Mr. Savage is teaching the course. Jason Bloom at Trine was the supervisor of the person who left, so Jason has been still providing assistance and guidance along with the teachers at Garrett High School who are implementing the same program. So in Mr. Savage's first year, he still has that support, not as much as we had planned on, but getting the equipment back and forth with multiple schools using it and not having a dedicated person for that has been a challenge.
Long-term funding or?
So this is a one-time purchase, so long as the equipment is what is required in the industry and for the certifications, it will last us that lifetime. Certainly, we want to stay abreast of what our community needs and make sure that those are the certifications we're offering. So I do expect that there will be a shelf life to this, but for now, this is a one-time purchase. Depends on how fast the industry advances.
6 months to a year.
Yes, it could. It could. Now, I don't anticipate it being that quick in terms of the training and the certification pieces, but we definitely want to be able to keep current with what's happening in our manufacturing companies. Yes.
Any further discussion or open for a motion?
I make a motion that we go ahead and give permission to apply for the grant.
Second.
Mr. Beard?
Yes.
Mrs. Boots?
Yes.
Mr. Caswell?
Yes.
Mrs. Maggart?
Yes.
Mr. Poor?
Aye.
Mr. Ridenhour?
Yes.
All right, next up is the superintendent report.
Board, first of all, and our patrons out there, I want to thank you. I hope everybody had a great holiday break, enjoyed some time with some loved ones, and had a chance to kind of get away and enjoy the season. We are excited to have kids back in our buildings. I know talking to principals and teachers, they were excited about having kids back in the buildings, and it's been kind of a nice start. I will also remind everybody that winter weather is here, as evident by this morning. We are using some e-learning days. We've been real communicative with our parents and our students about, our self-paced days. Today was one of them, and it was one of the 3 that we used, so we have 2 more. After that, it will be one of those sit in front of your Zoom and have that conversation with teachers and learn that way. So what I will remind everybody is, there are lots of opportunities. We get that information out, 15, 21. Mrs. Manahan pushes that out through our communication staff. You have WIKL. I got to make sure I get the right letters on everything like that. And even buildings are pushing those things out. We do expect some more winter weather issues coming up this week, so stay tuned and do that. I will also tell you that if parents or students have issues with e-learning, my tech department is ready to go to respond to a lot of those folks. So please rely on them, talk to teachers, talk to principals, get the buildings to make sure that your e-learning is up and going and answer any questions. This last thing that I have, if you've seen in the newspaper, and I am super excited to bring to you, the state has released graduation rates that are out there. And if you read the Herald Republican, going back to Mr. Beard, I will tell you that MSD of Steuben County scored first locally out of all the Steuben County schools. We came in with a great rate of 95.41. So if you remember where we were last year at 87, to be up at that 95% mark is outstanding. So I want to give a huge shout out to the teachers at the high school, the administrators, the guidance counselors, to the students and to the parents, and to our central office staff. We all worked as a team to get our kids where we needed to go. So I am super, super proud. So you can know this is a smiling superintendent. So I was kind of excited. If you look at all of our area 14 schools that are around us, MSD finished 4th. We were behind DeKalb County, who had 98, and then Garrett came in 96, and then we followed right in there with a 95. So super excited and super proud of our kids and our staff. So I have to brag about that a little bit. So we're totally excited. So congratulations to all of our students. And that's all I have, Mr. President.
congratulations on that and all the work that you put in and all the administrators and staff to get that there. Any other board member comments? All right, with that, take a motion, we adjourn the meeting.
I make a motion to adjourn the meeting?
Mr. Beard?
Yes.
Mrs. Boots?
Yes.
Mr. Caswell?
Yes.
Mrs. Maggart?
Yes.
Mr. Poor?
Aye.
Yes.